Good evening, folks. Thanks very much for joining us this Sunday evening. I hope all is well wherever you are at and you've had a great week. As you can see, joined by the regulars, No Chance and DJ. But this week we've got a special guest. Guerilla TV is going to be with us and having a good blur on all things him, his story and Scottish politics going forward. We'll just come right to No Chance. No Chance, how are you this evening, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm just looking forward to this. So I think it'll be it's a bit of a blast for the past because we're going back a wee while to the whole Anna Sarwar confrontation, which we'll get into, but it should be good.
What about yourself, DJ? How was things with yourself, mate?
Aye, no bad today. Just wanted a wee story quickly. What happened earlier on the day? I never said it to you on the phone earlier, but obviously my bag from when I was working and that, it's got walkie-talkies and stuff that I pinched from the site unintentionally. But I took my bag up from my room earlier on because I was looking for a knife to see if I needed any blades and that for when I start working and all that again. But I must have switched one of the walkie-talkies on by mistake. So later on, sitting there playing my Xbox, and this woman started talking, and it sounded like the police on the radio. I could shut myself, but I didn't for the life of me realise that there was a walkie-talkie in my bag that I switched on. I started to genuinely think that I was being, like my phone had been snatched by the feds or something. It was only after the fact, about half an hour later when it happened again, I realised that there was a noise in my bag. But I genuinely thought my phone had been fucking tapped in. But anyway, I'm alright. As it goes, like yourself.
I mate, no complaints here. Everything's easy, plodding along. I mean, it's one of those ones. If you've not got anything to complain about, you don't complain because usually when you do, something pops up. So, all good for the time being, mate. Thanks very much for asking. And last but not least, Guerilla TV, mate. How are you doing this fine evening?
Very well, gents. It's a pleasure to finally get on and having a chat with you fellas as well. I've been following your channels for it's been a wee while that you guys have been broadcasting, and it's been quite interesting, some of your subject matter. So I've been obviously avidly watching you guys, so it's now great that we'll finally get a chance, and I'm sure you're going to ask me some interesting questions about what's happening as well. Just like to point out, the Guerilla TV channel is a limited company, and we do cover all politics, and what you're going to talk to me about later on is a media company asking a politician questions, and that we're just the same as ITV, the BBC, or any other company. We are a limited company, and we've got the right to ask any politician any question that we so choose, on behalf of you and the public.
Aye. No, I mean that's grand. What we'll do is I think the best place so everybody gets a wee bit of insight would just be kind of to tell us where you started getting into politics, what kind of a spurred you to become political, and what's brought you on your present, the in-between, so that the people who perhaps aren't familiar with your channel have at least got a wee bit of catalogue, so they've got a sense of briefly who you are, mate.
Well, there's two things that they separate. As I mentioned, the Guerilla TV channel is a media company, and that is one side of my situation. And the other side is that I'm actually a politician and have stood in elections. So there's two separate entities there, just so that people understand. I have been involved in politics since my early 20s, which wasn't yesterday. And I have taken quite a long sabbatical out of politics. I stood in youth politics for one of the mainstream parties until I sort of found out what the actual ramifications of that were. And I was supported by people who I won't quote, but are both in Westminster and Scottish MSPs and MPs, or an MP and an MSP, but I'm obviously not going to say who their names are just now. I grew up, and I didn't really have, when you're young, I don't think you have a complete grasp of where you are in the political compass. I think the political compass test is something that everybody should do to find out exactly where they are on the political spectrum. I came back and I joined the Scottish and helped establish the Scottish Libertarian Party. I'm a libertarian liberal myself, so I'm a centrist libertarian, and or a classical liberal, some people call it. And I stood for the Brexit Party, obviously single issue, to primarily fight against the globalist agenda, and obviously to take us out of the unelected technocracy that is the European Union, where 28 unelected commissioners are dictating our legislation, which we were successful at for that. And so I was in the mainstream political party, the Brexit Party, the Scottish Libertarian Party, then the Brexit Party, and I believe that there's going to be a new centrist Libertarian Liberal Party about to start up as well. So that'll be the place that I am in the political spectrum. Let me just get this and make sure this is not frozen. Yep, can you hear me, guys?
Yep.
Hi, mate.
Yeah, that's fine. That's just frozen. Let me just get this back. Yeah, carry on. So that's about where we are.
No chance I'll come to you, because I suppose with the libertarian values in that sort of a political spectrum, that probably best to be touched on to you. Which you, because I know obviously with the political side of things, you see hope somewhat within the political system itself. So hearing obviously Guerilla's background with the parties and knowing that what you just said there's going to be another party coming forward. What's your take on that?
Well, my main focus is local politics, getting involved locally, try to make change there. Focusing nationally just doesn't make too much sense to me if no one's... Oh, I thought we were getting a wee show there.
This
from the
stopping.
That's all right. For the libertarian perspective, I kind of agree with them in economics. I think there's a lot of kind of issues socially. I don't know where you stand on immigration, Guerilla. That's one of my big problems with libertarians, is the kind of open borders fantasy land, and basically they stand by the non-aggression principle, where if we have open borders and you protect your land, everything's going to be fine and there'll be no dramas, when in reality they're going to bring in people, outsiders, that don't hold libertarian values, that don't really care about what we stand for, and everyone will just revert to shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you've got to understand that, and this is a sort of common mistake, but I understand where it's coming from, so I understand why you would actually say that. And the reason being is that the anarcho-capitalists who are literally, not metaphorically, literally the far right, that you couldn't get any further right than the anarcho-capitalists, but libertarians, which may be more palatable than an authoritarian far right, but they want open borders. So this is the thing that people get sort of confused. The word far right has been completely, excuse me my word, but bastardized. And it doesn't make sense from a political science point of view where they are. So you're correct. The far right, which you wouldn't expect, the far right anarcho-capitalists do want open borders, which I don't understand from an ideological point of view. One of the reasons I left the Scottish Libertarian Party was because the minarchists and the anarcho, because as I said, I'm a centrist, so the minarchists and the anarcho capitalists were quite strong in the Scottish Libertarian Party, and I didn't believe in open borders. How can you have property rights and have open borders? Doesn't make any sense. And but they also are sort of questionable about democracy, which I understand as well, because you could actually have votes for people being murdered in an extreme version. So there is a morality there on democracy in itself. However, I would suggest that democracy is probably, me being a centrist, I believe in democracy. But yeah, so the liberty, but the libertarian goes from left to right. So the libertarian or libertarianism is massive. It just means people who are not authoritarian. So Antifa are anarcho-communists and narco-syndicalists. So technically, they are libertarians, the flip side of the anarcho-capitalists. And they're also wanting open borders. So the anarcho-capitalists and the narco-syndicalists and narco-communists and Antifa are both open border exponents. One's in the far left and one's in the far right of libertarianism. I believe in borders. I believe that people should not be allowed to walk in. You wouldn't let people just walk into your house. Why would you just let people walk into your country? But why have we got this situation? Well, we've got people like George Soros, who is on the record for saying that he believes that borders are the problem and that refugees, and I'll come back to the refugees thing later, are the solution. So we have to feel so. Some people are refugees and they may require assistance, but people who are not refugees are not being deported. So illegal immigrants are being allowed to stay in the country. Thereby, de facto, we have open immigration, and that's done by the illiberal, liberal, undemocratic Democrats, the Labour Party, who are in a GIMP party, which I said in the article, a globalist Islamo-Marxist party now, the illiberal liberals, undemocratic Democrats, the conservatives or con-socialists who are basically following all of these, including the so-called Scottish National Party, who are not nationalist. And Wee Nippy has been on the record at the interview saying she would like to change the SNP's name, and obviously it doesn't reflect what they stand for. So what is it that they stand for? Well, she's a globalist shill. She's a postmodernist Marxist in her identity. Colin Fox said, oh no, she's not a Marxist, but there is a number of conflicting things that she is, and she's almost like a corporatist. The actual policies between her and Boris Johnson are virtually the same, and she's meant to be doing something completely different. When it came to the COVID, or when it comes to even Europe, I think Boris is a secret globalist shill as well. Although he did help with I think he's a political opportunist, and I don't think I think he was converted into leaving the EU rather than actually wanting to do it. And I think sometimes the globalists put up two candidates to play against each other, but they're both following the globalist agenda anyway. Certainly Boris is an open border exponent, and he just believes in open borders as well, to answer your question. So I don't see how, to answer your question, how you can have property rights and open borders. Why are we not deporting illegal immigrants? I don't have the right just to walk into somebody's house. Why have people got the right just to walk into the country? This has been done deliberately by the globalists and Soros in the backing.
Because I'm getting Tam Laird on my channel to have a chat, and I'm going to explore the libertarian view in immigration, also abortion. It's another thing.
Well, I like, so Tam and I go on well, and the new party and Tam's party will work together because there's a number of things like freedom of speech and freedom of choice that Tam and I both agree on. But one of the things, because I'm a centrist and Tam's slightly more to the right, that this is the issue. That was the fundamental reason that I left, and I had helped set up the party. I thought the Scottish Libertarian Party were going to be a centrist, like a classical liberal party, and they're a wee bit more minarchistic in their attitudes. So that there is a political and policy difference between me and Tam, if that makes sense.
No, fair play. I think we should maybe get into your run-in with Anas Sarwar. I don't know. I don't think the original video still exists, so we can't really play that in its entirety, can we?
It does. Is it still there?
Oh, that's it was.
Do you want me to put it up in the? Oh no! Well, maybe you can get it. Maybe that explains it. But
you've got a link for it, like, aye. Yeah, I tried to find it before and I couldn't do. Somebody else who came into my head there when you were on about that prick George Soros is somebody that doesn't really get that much attention. It was just by chance that I came.
There's a link in the chat.
Peter Sutherland, he's dead now, but he was the immigration minister, I believe, or something like. He had a high-ranking. He was a high-ranking official in the EU. Anyway, let's just put it that way. Because I can't remember off the top of my head, but he was at the Parliament, the UK Parliament, and there's clips of this actually on YouTube. I've got some of them on my intro video on YouTube. When you click on my channel, if you're not subscribed, you'll see them there. Where he talks about the need for European Union as a whole to undermine homogeneity. Like the whole principle, the core principles of the EU should be about undermining homogeneity. And what's interesting about him, though, is he was one of the founding members of what then went on in later life, after I believe he was dead at this point, to the Migrant Compact. He was one of the people behind it, the early frameworks that were set up for it. So when you take all that into consideration, you've got he wasn't the only one, obviously, a bunch of these people came together to create a Migrant Compact, and all of them had an agreement, pre-agreement, that they needed to undermine the homogeneity of European Union nations.
Well, this is coming from the globalists. This has already been decided at international level. The Barcelona process, the Union of the Mediterranean, and then the UN Compact in Marrakesh. This is already documented. And the globalist shills, the fake conservatives, the fake SNP, the Communist Green Party are all part of it. They gaslight the public. It's not in any one of their manifestos that they believe in open immigration, but yet they follow the globalist agenda, and the globalist agenda will keep on going unless you actually have parties that are anti-globalist. And even though I'm a libertarian, obviously, if Tam believes in open borders, or Tam's party believes in open borders, then that I don't. I'm probably similar to you guys, and I believe in managed immigration.
I'd go a step further than that at this point, I'll be totally honest. I mean, I don't want to get boiled down in this too much until we at the very least get through this segment. But I will say this much, because I've come to a point now where it's just zero immigration for me. Fundamentally zero immigration. The reason for it at this point, I'm shocked to some people, the reason for it at this point is because I'm sick to the back teeth of politicians, especially in Scotland, but not limited to Scotland, standing there with a straight face and saying it quite clearly and plainly that because of our record low birth rates, we need immigration. Now, if you follow that to its logical conclusion without increasing or incentivizing native births in any capacity at all, you are simply leading us to go extinct. If we're not having children and you bring in people that are having children, it's simple mathematics. Yeah, we will go extinct. So if you're going to suggest to me that you're going to bring in people to have children on my behalf, I have the right to tell them to fuck off. Right, I'll say them that.
Well, let me just go into this and a couple of things that you've actually mentioned there. If you, because I told you earlier on when we started that Nicola Sturgeon's an intersectional Marxist, she believes in the press and oppressor. So she covered up, the SNP covered up, which is what I actually chinned Sawar about, but it was under the SNP's watch that happened, that Muslim asylum seekers were grooming in Glasgow. It was in the Express in 2015, and then again in the Sun, I think in 2020 or 2021, the grooming kids in Glasgow, who I think off the top of my head were under the care of social services in Glasgow, and they were grooming these children in Glasgow. I was down at the Tommy Robinson, the Rape of Britain in Telford, and horrific what was going down there, being covered up by the police. He did a very good job of investigating that. So there's a number of things that is actually happening, but the socialists are deliberately trying, just like with the critical race theory, are deliberately trying to through the imposition of this gender conflict, undermine families, undermine traditional relationships, and destroy the interactions between men and women. I mean, Nicola Sturgeon hasn't had any kids, and she's not adopted or anything else. Well, I don't think she likes that, to be honest with you. I don't think that she's the type of person who would appreciate that with the stories. I mean, it was on before I confronted Alex Salmond about it on his trial, that it was on the television. The reason I go in is it was on the British TV that she had an exotic past, but there was allegations, which basically they were saying she's a lesbian. And she was.
That's to do with it anyway. Apparently, she's got some sort of gagging order, eh?
And then apparently she beat up somebody, but we'll get into that.
No, I did see you saying that somewhere, but a comment on Scottish Family Party's channel, but I've never heard that. Here, can I ask what you want me to do here? You want me to play the video, which is it's 11 minutes long, or get the article up? I mean, you can play a bit of the video if you want. I think confrontation, because. This is where I'll say this, this is where I initially became aware of you. I mean, I knew of the grooming gang situation in Glasgow prior, due to Sargon of all people. He uploaded a video just out of the blue back when he had the old channel before the Lotus Eaters and that. And he uploaded
they're doing great down there. The Lotus Eaters is brilliant.
He uploaded some video about that the police had covered up, or there had been a cover up in general of a grooming gang scandal in Glasgow. So it was just a wee article, I think, from the Sun, as you said. Like, I was totally shocked to find that out, because I had no idea. And then to find out that it was uncovered years prior, and they'd managed to cover it up for so long. And then when you looked into the backgrounds of the men that were involved in this, they came from countries where the vast majority of them had no justification to be in our country under the pretext of claiming asylum. There was a guy from Morocco and Turkey. What are people from Turkey and Morocco doing in Glasgow claiming asylum? But the fact that it was covered up for years, and it actually boils into a point that Bonnie Lad and we're talking about in the stream towards the latter half last night. I can't remember word for word the article headline and whatnot, but again, the talk of like playing down and not looking too much into the grooming gang scandals for fear of being called racist. This is the same sort of shit that was happening in Glasgow. They buried it because they didn't want any racial tension, etc. But I'll share the screen now if you want.
Well, yeah. Just to say about what happened with TR down in Telford. He uncovered the fact that police were getting paid off by this gang of potentially Muslim drug dealers down there as well, and they were beating up women to keep them silent and drove people out the town. And these people are innocent until proven guilty. I just want to state that as well. But there was certainly evidence that the police weren't even investigating it properly. They said the police were on the record for saying that there was 40 years of evidence that goes back 40 years that they haven't done anything. So this must be coming from the Labour Party and the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the full political establishment, who's basically going through the globalist agenda, and they don't care about the individual. They just care about the globalist manifesto, not the manifesto that they tell you what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think some of them have been charged or were charged, from what I remember reading about it, as well. But
there was a girl. Can I just say there was a girl who was made pregnant when she was 16, and they had the fetus, and they knew who had impregnated her, and they never got charged.
You're talking about the Tommy's document.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. Well, I was referring to Glasgow, some of them have been charged. So when I seen, because I've seen the articles popping up left, right, and centre, far right reporter or far right confrontation, all this shit, the way that the Scottish media operates, you've been branded and shamed as far right.
Well, if you actually hear it, I tell.
Shared, but it was just I remember seeing this, I'd seen the articles at the time. And I shared one of the articles on my Telegram, if I remember rightly. And then I managed to find the video that you'd uploaded, which is this one. And I was like, this is the video in question. There's nothing fucking racist about it. You're asking normal questions, but the way that people like Anar Sarwar, who I'm very familiar with on my channel, I've been making a video on him, they always refer back to race. Yeah, I dare you to ask me questions you're only doing that because I'm brown. That's the sort of way.
Well, his colour of his skin wasn't important. It was about the fact he's a Muslim. He's a Muslim. The fact is, he's got a set of beliefs, and I was asking him about what his set of beliefs and what the background that he's came from. That the person who was burnt to death and beaten to death for taking down a poster, a Sri Lankan fellow in Pakistan. These are the information that I was asking him was actually from other media periodicals. I've actually done another one to break down each of the questions that I basically asked him. And there's another video I'll put up in the chat just now. There's another video that I've done that allows people to actually go and actually see where the actual questions that I put to him came from, and it was all from the mainstream media, which I'll just put this in the chat as well so you can actually see this as well.
I think the issue with the questions you asked, I get your reasoning behind it, but the reasoning really wasn't explained. I think a better approach would be, we see you politicising an event that happened 3,000 miles away, George Floyd, to rail against white people. But why are you not talking about X, Y, and Z? Is that because they shared your faith? Is that because X, Y, and Z? Like, I think if it was framed a bit better, you could avoid the smear. But just because it was like questions thrown out there without context, they're able to just go, "Shut up, you're far right, beat it."
Yeah, and I think that was my mistake. I think you're completely correct, and this is why I had to I corrected it, because I had to show context to the questioning, which I then did. I'll just put this link up to the context. And but I think I was a bit cack-handed, to be honest with you, with that interview. I'm usually better than that. And I think I had to justify what I was actually asking and why I was actually asking them these questions. And I think I could have done it better. So I totally accept the criticism, because I think it's correct. And but I think I'm glad I did it.
Aye, no, 100%. There need to be. I've always said we need to make politicians a lot more uncomfortable than they are, because I think you made the point. I can't remember if it was in this. No, it was just your kind of breakdown video. You mentioned that the media companies just now, they'll just basically run soft pieces for the government. They're never really held to account. They've got a very good relationship. They're laughing and joking. There's no uncomfortable questions. None of that. It's just massaging their ego and putting out like a very what would you call that? Politically beneficial
symbiosis, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But will we play this, because I think we've talked about it a lot.
Please do. Just for the folk in the chat that's watching, this is the situation. So Guerilla TV's approached Anasawa and asked him perfectly legitimate questions. They went through a turbulent time with the mainstream media, slander and all. So what we'll do is we'll show the clip, then let you come to your conclusions on the type of questions that was being proposed to him. If you just take it away. No chance, please.
Do you want me to break it down why I was asking the questions? Do you want to take one question at a time and I'll explain why I was asking it? Is that going to be beneficial?
What we'll do is, mate, is we'll play this clip. By that time, probably there might be something in the chat, but at the end of it, you can talk us through it step by step, and then we'll interject it as you go along.
Right.
Mr. Sarwar, did you think you were racist when you were talking about the actual people in Glasgow? Are there too many white people in Scotland? Or too many white people in the constituency?
I'm not sure I ever said that.
Can you tell us about the child rape laws in Pakistan, please, sir? And the fact that they said there was going to be anti-Islamic? Anti-Islamic, sir?
People here now.
No, I'm being serious. Obviously, in Pakistan, they said it was un-Islamic not to rape kids. And they said it was blasphemous not to complain against it.
I think your questions say more about you, sir, than they do about me.
No, I'm asking you a question. It's independent, though. It's not really an answer, though.
I think your questions say more about you than they do about me.
Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes. Carry on.
Yeah, there's a bit of dead time here, yeah.
So, Mr. Sarwar, can you tell us the names of the 3 people in Glasgow who were murdered by the Muslim asylum seeker? Can you tell us what happened with the rapes of children in Glasgow from fake asylum seekers who were raping kids, and then it was covered up by the actual...
I think you should take your far-right nonsense somewhere else.
I would think that somebody that supports as a Muslim who supports a prophet who had sex with a 9-year-old girl and had sex slaves, I think that's more of an issue, is it not, than my right-wing nonsense. I'm actually a centrist libertarian liberal, to be honest with you. You I think, are a member of a globalist Islamo-Marxist party, the GIMPs.
Excuse me, I was witness to something about a Muslim...
Sorry.
This guy's my favourite. I'm a witness, Mr. Sarwar. I'm a witness.
And he's meant to be the objective. He's meant to be the objective journalist. Not only is he interfering in me actually speaking to Sarwar, completely unethical, but he's literally brown-nosing Sarwar. I think he got an interview with Sarwar after for ITV, and ITV are not allowing people to have jobs who are white. So they're basically a racist company who are preventing white people saying no whites allowed, basically, on their application. And he's calling everybody else a racist.
Can I ask, did you get any legal consequences off the back of this? Did the
No,
police visit you?
No, don't be daft. What are they going to say? I didn't say anything. There was nothing they could have actually said. All my questions were completely legitimate.
Well, you're lucky the new hate crime bill's not passed yet. It's not went through yet, because if it's just perceived as Islamophobic, you'd be done.
That's disgusting as well. That's absolutely disgraceful. And Islam advocates murdering people. So there's certain groups like apostates, homosexuals, and atheists, and other people who they actively want to kill. It's in the text from that. So I don't know how that is allowed to go on. And obviously the Prophet Muhammad was a slave trader. So the big thing about what we nippies want to do with the Greens and bring in a slave museum, I don't know if the slavery museum is going to document the fact that it was Africans that sold other Africans and Muslims who sold Africans as slaves. I don't think there's any evidence that there was raiding parties down there to actually capture slaves. I believe it's all traded. I don't know that for a fact. I'm not a West African historian, but as far as I'm aware, these people were sold, and the Muslims obviously follow a prophet that has slaves, and even ISIS had sex slaves markets.
Do you know what I think would be quite a good political stunt is, I don't know if you're familiar with Jeff Palmer. No. He's this black gentleman that is moans about slavery all the time, and it's even led to the point where Glasgow University have put up they've corrected certain artwork and all sorts. That they've put plaques on statues admitting their role in the slave trade and apologising for slavery. I think with the Islamic Museum they've got in Glasgow, it might be worth pushing for them to amend the plaques to talk about the slavery involvement that the Arabs had. Yeah. And you'd see how quickly
there's a couple of things. So if the African Americans who were descendants of slaves in the West Indies are going to have reparations, the reparations they would have to get would be from Africans, unless they could prove that there was raiding parties that went down and actually captured them. If they were then enslaved and sold as slaves by other Africans, their reparations would have to come from Africa. And then we're going to have to then decide about the white slave trade, which was done even up into the UK by Africans. And we're going to have to now look at that for reparations from Africa. And obviously Europe was invaded twice by Africa before any of the whether the Punic Wars or the Islamic invasion of Spain was invaded twice by Africans, and we're going to have to talk about that in colonialism before the colonialism happened.
Reparations is just a pipe dream.
Of course.
It's one of those things that you get Africans that arrived 5 years ago.
No, but do you know why the globalists are so keen on the reparations is that they're going to tax you money, and you guys your families might have not had nothing to do with slaves. Your families might have never seen an African before at that point, and nothing to do with the slave trade. They're going to tax you, take the money themselves, spend it on whatever they want. Where's the £70 million from Wee Nippy that was meant to be going to local councils? Where's the £600,000 from the internal party, the donations that were given to the party? Where's that going? And why has it been kicked into the long grass by the police? That wouldn't be happening. The SNP and her rules becoming increasingly dictatorial and more authoritarian as the days go on.
Yeah, which I always find impossible to take seriously, considering she's just a little redacted. I can't stand her.
Where I was going with that was you get Africans appearing on our soil, let's say 5 years ago, then getting on this reparations train or this racial grievance, and you're like, you arrived 5 years ago, there's no proof that there was any link to slavery, but purely based on the colour of your skin, money.
There might be a link if they actually enslaved and sold the slaves. So there might be a link, but the link might not be from us to them. It might be them who actually sold the slaves. That's why there's a bit of, in America, they don't really talk about it, but there's a bit of friction between like people who were from the West Indies and Caribbean and Africans. I actually have a lot of friends who are African, and in Dubai, I helped a couple of them out, a couple of people out. So there is friction, because I think deep down they know that there was the Africans and Muslims who sold in the transatlantic slave trade, and then we've got the white slave trade done by Africans, and then the East African slave trade done by Muslims again into the Middle East.
There was also a heavy Jewish influence in the slave trade as well.
Yeah, I don't know much about that, but I heard that as well.
They owned a lot of the slave ships, too. But we're not allowed to talk about it.
Well, just going back to the video, right? Because I do want to touch on one thing, Guerilla, and you had said earlier on in the stream you believed in democracy, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to ask you this. See, with the current climate of things, you know, where we do have an influx of illegal immigration, there is quite a lot of abhorrent crimes in nature up and down the country that's happening. And you go up and obviously you're talking about a very topical and factual issue with Mr. Sarwar. And now you're being dragged through the mud for just speaking your mind, not for a hateful position, just genuinely seeking answers. All these problems, in one way or another, has kind of been facilitated through the means of quote-unquote democracy. So do you not think, overall, there is a fundamental issue with the term of democracy, that it's allowed so many nations, at least in the Western world, to decline in such a rapid format?
Yeah, but the problem is we've got this is possibly how we would look at things differently. There was 29 political parties stood at the Scottish election. Not every one of them is going to be a globalist party. And what you have to do in a democracy is go out and campaign for parties that are not globalist shell parties, and politicians that are going to be out and good and have equality. That's the situation that I would suggest that you could do, and you can actually then advance people who are not like Sarwar, who are not like Nicola Sturgeon. But in a democracy, you have to go and argue the point and put the point out. It should be noted as well, mind you, that I said that Sarwar could lose up to 5 MSPs, and he lost 2, and he nearly lost 3. And I predicted that prior to him actually standing. And if the million Scots who voted for the SNP on the second vote, if half of them had voted for the Scottish Libertarian Party and half of them had voted for example, the Alba Party, and that because for that million votes, the SNP only got 2 MSP seats. They would have decimated the unionist vote. So they would have decimated. They would have probably only got about 10 MSPs. Rather than closer to 20, and it would also decimated the Conservatives. But we Nippy, obviously not one complete power, didn't give the right advice, and the right advice would have been, if you are following the bigger nationalist movement, and I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong, I'm just saying on a political strategy point of view, that if they had done that, they would have absolutely decimated the unionists on the second past the post. They would have got, instead of getting 2 nationalist MSPs for the SNP, they would have got between 10 to 20 MSPs for the Alba and the Scottish Libertarian Party, who are both want Scottish independence, but different types.
So I suppose what I would naturally ask, following up to that then, would be, how could you really kind of change that mindset? Because if we're being perfectly honest, in at least in terms of Scotland, everybody voted Labour because they didn't want the Conservatives in, right?
Yeah.
Now, the SNP, like for like, came in as socialists, but obviously with the end goal of seeking independence. However, there is quite a wide spectrum of different minds within the SNP, from Conservatives to Libertarians to outright socialists. So,
yeah.
We've already had a little sample of liberalism with the Lib Dems in England, and obviously they aren't that big in terms of Scotland, at least anyway, because I think, maybe 2 or 3 seats are always guaranteed in Scotland, at least one of them is in Shetland or Orkney. How could you change that mindset, which is being perceived in? Because right now, there doesn't look like there's really too many serious alternatives apart from going to the complete opposite spectrum?
Well, I mean, we are the opposite spectrum because the SNP, the Labour Party, the Liberals, they are all sort of neoliberals. They're all following the globalist agenda. We are the flip. We are the opposite, but we're not the left to right opposite. We are the opposite from an authoritarian point of view to the libertarian stance, so that we would be opposite the illiberal, liberal, undemocratic Democrats, because they are not liberal or democratic. They stood against the vote for Brexit. They were wanting to overturn that. They are increasingly doing the same intersectional stuff that even the Conservative Party are now doing, which is far left under Boris Johnson. So I would prefer to live in a free Scotland where the state is not always interfering, but Nicola Sturgeon is a wee busybody, and that's her managerial style, as a wee busybody. That's why she's called Wee Nippy.
My issue with the kind of centrist liberal types is they end up, they never defend anything, they never stand for anything. They're just to oppose certain things that are getting brought up at the time, and then as the left go further and further, they then change their position. And you see that for even, say, your Sargons, for example. They've started accepting a lot of the gender ideological terms and using things like cisgender and all that. And you're like, that 5 years ago was completely, they were saying we can't give in to the language. If you give up to, the language, that's you seeding the ground, and then we'll end up fighting in their terrain, and then that's what they end up doing time and time again. Immigration's another one where the anti-immigration at one point, and then it's, maybe we should just accept the high skilled. Then all right, well, refugees are all right, and they never stand for anything, which is my big issue.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's we require a more robust liberalism. I believe in freedom for the individual, but we need a strong state. That was when I was speaking to David Clues on Unity News Network. He said we don't really want a big state, we just want a strong state, and I think that's correct. But none of the Liberal Ab Con Party, the SNP, the Greens are even enforcing the rules. So there's rules there. And they are just saying, we're just not going to bother. So what's the point in them being there? Are they just getting big checks and mismanaging the economy and basically having corporatists, not capitalism, corporatism as a source of economics, where their friends are given special treatment for projects, for big spending things, who have donated to the Conservative Party. That's not a capitalist system, that's a corporatist system where the state is interfering in economics.
Well, talking about interfering in economics, I suppose this would be a nice way just to go into the topic of the Great Reset. Now, I know you obviously wanted to touch onto that, Guerilla, so I suppose I'll let you take front and centre of this, and if anybody wants to interject in between, then please feel free to do so.
Well, what they said and what has been documented online, the German fellow that did talked about the Great Reset, which he seems to have got a lot of sway, whether it be Turdo in Canada, or that donkey in New Zealand, or even Merkel. I mean, everyone's a globalist shell party. But what the Great Reset stated was that you'll own nothing, which is Marxian in its terminology. You've got to be able to understand what they actually mean. And that is from Marx. So why is he pushing a Marxist agenda? And would you guys be happy with owning nothing, not being able to buy a house, reduced mobility, financial mobility, not having, I don't know how far they want to take it, for not having possessions? So we're going to have a whole bunch of haves, a technocracy of haves, and we're going to almost have like a caste system of like a proletariat who are not accountable to the people. Where, like in the EU, the commissioners who are dictating the legislation are not actually held to scrutiny or parliamentary scrutiny because they're appointed and not elected. And we're going to have a technocracy rather than actually a democracy. And that's what the globalists are trying to push. And they basically, what he said is you'll have nothing and be happier. And I don't know if you guys would be happier by having nothing. I think we should have a free and entrepreneurial Scotland where we go back to being the best in the world at developing things, and we continue our expertise rather than being held back. We're always held back by wee Nippy and our minions, and also the Lib Lab Con Party and the Greens as well. I mean, none of these are I use the word progressive not in the political progressive. I mean progressive in the actual adjective. Progressive parties that want to develop Scottish entrepreneurs and Scottish greatness in so many fields. I don't have to quote to you guys what we've already done over the years.
In terms of owning nothing, I think I can speak for everyone, including yourself there, that just doesn't sound appealing to anybody. But we've got to look at it's I believe it's like an onion. The more you peel it back, the more you kind of get to the middle, what makes it tick. In terms of the World Economic Forum, I would just call that the tyrannical beast. You know, I don't know about yourself, and I know the boys' opinions, and them that tunes in will know I believe in God. I'm a Christian, so when I look at this, I see this as a very demonic setup, to say the least. In terms of not only taking away your livelihood, it also takes away the things that you've worked hard for. These are freedoms that are given to you by God. I would obviously rebel and push back against that, any form of that, naturally, which is why obviously I enjoy having these conversations, because there's a lot of things in Scotland, as everyone is aware of, that I just look at and I think that's got to be called out for exactly what it is. Now, the way that I suppose the world is going to work, and this is again where I suppose people would differ. This is why I think there is no a political solution as such, because everything that makes politics work from start of business to end of business is totally facilitated through power of finance, which is something the common man just simply will never have, because it's not a system created by us. It's a system that was simply put onto us and put us under a tyrannical boot, which is why I think since 2000 since the Brexit vote, that was the last time I participated in a vote, and I have no plans to do so again. I don't know, I can't speak for the boys obviously, but in terms of the World Economic Forum's plans, I suppose I would say to that, everyone in this chat, we are pretty much in the end game.
Yeah, well, let me cover a few things. I've been doing a lot of the reporting on the marches for the not anti-vaxxers, but anti-mandates and anti-masks, and they've got a few issues, and that they're seeing it very much as well from a religious point of view. I'm an atheist, but I accept your point of view, that you can see it from your religious point of view, and I totally accept that. And I don't think you're alone in doing that, because I think there's a lot of religion mixed in with the anti-vaxxers as well. But I think it's a political. If you don't participate in the political decision, you get wee nippy. So if you can't be bothered going down, and people have died to give us a vote, if you can't be bothered going down and putting your X in the vote, then you get what you're given then, unfortunately. And they're already trying, the globalists are already trying to gerrymander the political process. We've already seen through the postal votes down in, where was it, Peterborough, the person who was found guilty of postal vote gerrymandering was allowed back in the count with Jeremy Corbyn. So he shouldn't have been anywhere near that count. I think an Asian Muslim fellow, not Asian, but a Muslim fellow. And he was in the count, and he had been convicted of postal vote fraud, and he was back in the count after his conviction. So I think there is issues there, and I think electoral integrity is one of the issues that we have to strive to change. But I would definitely say vote. And what you have to do, and this is why hopefully when I'm talking to you guys and other people, which I've talked to obviously 6 of the political leaders from smaller parties so far, and hopefully getting a couple more to find out what they're doing, to actually publicise alternatives to the Lib Lab Con Party, the Greens and the SNP. There are different political ideas from, like Tam Laird, who you're going to speak to, like Tam, who have a completely different point of view than the mainstream. And it was good to see Tam on GB News, and he did very well speaking on that as well. And he was very good when he was speaking to me for 3 hours. Go on.
I meant to say earlier that when I was talking about the libertarian view in immigration, I don't know Tam's view in immigration. I know within the Scottish Libertarian Party, it's a kind of, I would say it's probably about a 50-50 split. Where 50% are very open borders, bring everybody in because that's libertarian, while others take a more realistic view where if you really want to preserve your culture, your nation, your worldview, it needs to be homogenous. But so that's something I'll explore with Tam, but I didn't mean to say he is X or Y, but
yeah, no, but I think the party's opinion is on a more, and that's one of the things that was more off-putting. I could have probably stayed in the Libertarian Party had that not been one of the stances. But again, I would be, because it's slightly to the right, it's and I'm more of a centrist. There would be differences because I do believe in a redistribution of wealth, and I do believe in something like Milton Friedman's negative income tax, where the people who are less fortunate will get an additional amount of money, and which actually is talked about in Marxian terms. But this would allow the poor to have a decreasing amount of money rather than the consistent guaranteed or universal basic income. This would decrease the more money you earned, because there's not really much point in taxing the rich, then giving them the money back to re-tax them again. That doesn't make any sense at all, if you ask me. But if you give the poor a decreasing amount of money, then that would actually benefit them and be beneficial for the redistribution of wealth and allow them to generate businesses from their own endeavours.
I'd say if you just limit useless government spending, you'd win a lot. You'd be able to do a lot more than any form of universal basic income or some form of handouts. Like the millions and millions of pounds the government spend on all these LGBT groups and these Jewish groups and this group and Muslim groups and this group, that should all just be fucking binned immediately. They're talking about cutting the bottom of doors off. That should be binned. Like all this. That has
been binned.
Has it now, right?
But it just shows you how stupid her points of view are. I mean, we need a woman. All right, what's your idea? Oh, we're going to cut off the bottom of school doors. Why don't you just open the door? That's what the hinges are there for. I mean, it's stupid. It's so imbecilic. This woman is a lawyer, and her decision-making process throughout the last 7 years has been a joke. And it's been, we could go through and list all the absolutely crazy stuff that she's done over the last 7 years. And I think it's been done deliberately because of the globalist agenda. But the fact that she's locked, I feel sorry for the younger generation who've been locked in their houses for 2 years and not allowed to participate in society, had their education affected for something that I don't want to talk on if you're on YouTube, because I might get taken down. I've already had 2 strikes, so if I get one more strike, the channel's getting nuked anyway.
I think it's, again, it goes back to the state of society where in order to achieve full potential, you're meant to obviously be able to converse and say things that might be a bit unpalatable for people, you know, and people could say things. We could be sitting here talking about like the makeup of the UK, things about pro-Scotland, pro-England, pro-Wales, pro-Northern Ireland, but then we could obviously talk about the flaws. And it's not that you're doing that in a malicious way. You're just doing that to talk about this is a good thing, but what could we excel at? And even in a social demographic thing, and I think that's a hot potato for many people. If you talk about that, you're automatically labelled, slurred, and shut down. But by doing that, that obviously adds fuel to the fire to people to put in their heels and say, no, do you know something? I don't know what the big taboo is about that. This is meant to be a free society. People actually fought for something that they believed in, and that was a God-given freedoms for people to own a property, to have freedom of speech, to have freedom of thought, and converse and fix the problems that's in society. Well, this is one of the things that's been took away from us without actually realising it. And it's those levers which actually make us tick and make us great. And again, without trying to be a Debbie Downer, it has been done, quote unquote, in the name of democracy for the benefit of a select few.
Yeah, well, I think that's the globalist. Go back to the globalist agenda, and you need to fight against the globalist agenda. And I think that because we have the illusion of choice, but all of these parties are globalist shell parties. Even if you're voting, you're not getting a change. If Tam was in power and I was in power, and we're both in separate parties, you would see a change. One of the things I was toying with myself, I wouldn't do this, and near with Tam, because we're both libertarians, we believe in free speech. But both Tam and myself would get rid of the hate speech laws. But what we could do is use their hate speech laws against them and say, okay, so if you're using these laws, we'll put in, if you say the word misogyny or racist, which was a term used by the mass murdering Jewish communist Trotsky in his book, and that was where it first came. I spoke to a Socialist Workers' Party member, and he agreed with me before I actually commented on it. If you use this word incorrectly and you can't prove that the person is racist, misogynist, or whatever else it is, you're going to go to jail for 7 years. We're going to use that as your hate speech. If you say white supremacy and you can't prove it, you're going to get done for racism. So we could actually utilise the hate speech laws, just expand them, and then turn it back on the left, so that it starts to criminalise them if they want to play those games. So that's one of the ways to actually to do it. I wouldn't do that. I think what Tam and Bai would both do is actually just get rid of them, get rid of the laws and get rid of a lot more laws, get forensic accounting in to do public spending, which I think Scott there had touched on. We need to know where the money's been spent. If it's been misappropriated, people need to go to jail. That's why I said that Nicola Sturgeon might be looking at jail time. She's already tried to put her former leader in jail. She's turned out to be like the Sith in the Lord of the Rings, where she tried to stab her ex-leader in the front and the back. She might be going to jail. There might be a misappropriation of funds here, and public funds. Where's that £70 million for the councils? Why do we not know what it is? Why is there no transparency in the state? Both Tam and myself would actually change this. I do believe Tam would do it as well. I believe I could work. We'll be able to work with Tam, and both of us share a lot of principles that we share together, and we could definitely work on a lot of things. We both believe in the reduction in the state and more transparency and finance, the financing of the state, that people should actually know where is your money. It's not Nippy's money, it's your money, where your money's going.
I think your issue with using the hate crime laws against them is the hate crime laws don't apply to you. You as a straight white man, they don't give a shit what your grievance is. They don't care if you've been inconvenienced in any way, and the deck is stacked against you. And I think when I was watching your kind of breakdown video, I understand why you done this, because there was a hit piece due and you were explaining yourself. But to me, a lot of the 2 hours was basically you saying how not racist you are in like many different ways. But I think that term needs to just, like, you need to just fucking shrug that off as if it's nothing, because the thing is, like, all these groups have special interest groups, whether that be black and minority ethnic, whether that be Muslim, whether that be Jewish, whether it be women, whether it be trans, gay. Like, the only group that aren't protected under the law and in public life is white men, specifically straight white men.
Which comes back to what I was saying. This is all from the intersectional types. So this is exactly the intersectionalist agenda. Let me just get this back in. The intersectional agenda, and the white men are basically the enemy. So this is unfortunately, for goodness sake, unfortunately, what their agenda is, a documented agenda. Carol Benjamin Sargo in the back has commented on this on several occasions. He's actually done the critical race theory, and he's actually covered a lot of what it says and why these people are actually thinking like they do. Because it's documented, Nicola Sturgeon, this is like a set of rules, but and they don't care about straight white men. It's openly racist, it's openly sexist, and it's openly against your sexuality as well. And we've got, as you guys have rightly pointed out, we've got a declining population. Women are not having enough children here. And that could well be because of the permeation of this anti-male, making women hate men because they're seen as the oppressor. And that's from the Frankfurt School, because they found out they had killed about 100 million people. They had to change it. And instead of actually doing the class struggle, so they do the conflict between men and women, black and white, gay and straight. So that's where their deliberate Marxist agenda to reshape society in a communist on the Marxist agenda.
No, I get all that. I've heard those points before, but when it comes to the whole classical liberal argument, is they always assume that if you work in your own interest, you're engaging in identity politics and you're no better than X, Y, and Z, when in reality, all you're doing is accepting that you're currently being attacked. And I don't see it as engaging in identity politics. I see that as acting in self-defence. And just
well, it's true. It's true. They are deliberately attacking straight white men. But it could also be, you rightly pointed out, I think, about our off-stream, that it also adversely affects people of an African descent as well. So adversely affects them. It doesn't positively affect women either, or even gay people. But this agenda is getting pushed through BLM, Marxist organisation, LGBT plus, whatever the hell it is. Not gay people, not black people. I don't like using the word black. People of an African origin. It adversely affects them. If you think back to the Ethiopian, when Band-Aid, I don't know how old you guys are, but if you think back to when Band-Aid, the people were starving. Now, I've got a lot of Ethiopian friends, they're absolutely brilliant bunch. And it was very sad seeing them in that situation. But that, again, was, I think, from a Marxist government, that they were actually starving, like what happened in Ukraine, like what happened in the killing fields of Cambodia. And it doesn't work. Marxism doesn't work to the extent that the CCP in China has rejected economic Marxism, and now it's basically more of a sort of fascist country than an actual underlying Marxist country.
So what would you propose that would work then, given all the different types of socialism, communism, Sense Communum, he's a good friend of ours. He's a regular. And he does a fantastic stream with the Amigos on a Saturday night. He used the word ersatz, democracy. You know, basically it's not genuine. And I don't think anything about the Western society, because you were touching on there about women. I agree to a certain point. I think it's just an absolute decadence by perverted tools that has caused a lot of our problems, especially with the declining birth rate. So all that combined, we've seen all these atrocities through the world of different political doctrines. What do you think would be a realistic one? From my own individual standpoint, looking at the field and truly looking, going, there isn't one that's going to best serve the whole world. Because I think collectively, people are different by nature and by culture. Like, for example, Scots are very different from like Ethiopians, and Russians are very different from Brazilians. So I think, realistically speaking, there isn't a per se political alignment that will work for everyone. But I think what would be best in my own opinion, would be native, somewhat, if you want to call it tribalism, all the better, because at least within that subculture, it works for that group of people. Where multiculturalism, where you take all these pieces of the puzzle together, it completely collapses within itself because there's nothing there that unifies the people unilaterally.
Yeah. And this has been done by the globalists again, this multiculturalism or increased diversity, which you pointed out could be described, I think, as almost ethnic cleansing. Nicola Sturgeon, there's a UN declaration on genocide that says that if you are engaging in a policy as a leader that would undermine and ethnically destroy your culture and a way of life, then you are could be put on trial vis-a-vis the genocide rules. So we've got the highest number of alcohol deaths because of Nicola Sturgeon locking them in probably for 2 years. Highest number of drug deaths in Scotland that's ever seen as well. We've got a decrease in population, which Nicola Sturgeon is doing nothing, including herself, to actually change. She hasn't surrogated, she hasn't adopted, she hasn't done anything of the ilk. All her agenda is the open door immigration, same with Sawar, same with the Conservatives, same with the Liberals, same with the Green Party. So not one of these parties is going to enforce the borders. You've got, we've got, as we've said, we've got a declining population, and the only thing that Nicola Sturgeon can do is population replacement, which again may well mean that she's in breach of the genocide convention from the UN. And Nicola Sturgeon wants to bring in legislation that's done by the UN, so she's not only keen to go and join up to the technocracy in Europe, but she also now wants to wholesale import legislation from the UN, not democratically elected, and put it into Scots law. That was in her manifesto, but not the UN Declaration on Genocide, funnily enough.
I think in many instances when it comes to all things Nicola Sturgeon, the SNP, you'll find that they're probably the most opportunistic so-called politicians to ever walk the corridors at Holyrood. But then again, I believe Holyrood is an absolute cesspit of a so-called parliament. There's no public assembly there for the people to properly scrutinise and hold people accountability, because we don't have those levers in place to do so, like you've probably had way back in other civilizations, but Western. And that, I suppose when we look at the Western world, again, I hate using this word, the Western democracies, from the inception of the European Union right across to America and Canada, it just seems to be in the last 50 years there has been a dramatic decline, not only in terms of economy, but daily living, education, in health. And it can all be, we can kind of call it, it's the doing of the globalists, but they only get to do what they're doing by the measures of how we live within their institution, within that lever of, okay, you go to academia, it's typically Marxist that are teaching the young kids in education. So we've got these people, again, within the democratic system that's elected, even though we clearly seen, and I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, I make this perfectly clear right now, but we clearly seen that the American election was rigged. One of the most powerful nations on earth, and nothing has been done about it. Nothing.
Scots, for the sake of your channel, allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
Allegedly it was rigged.
Mm-hmm.
You get the point, though. You get the point.
Yeah, but let me just take on that. It has been changed because there's things that are now being brought in the states, each of the individual states, to bring in a more stringent refinements on the ballot, like stopping postal ballots, and I think they're not tackling postal vote harvesting, which I think should be made illegal as well. That shouldn't. You should have to go. Yeah, I don't see the big deal about going down to a polling station, putting an X in a box. They should be required to do that. I mean, unless there's some medical emergency or there's something that prevent them, I don't think there should be wide-scale postal votes. It's too easy to rig the system on the back of that. So. And I think that's already been proven in the UK, so we're not pointing the finger just at America. But there was something you were going to say, something you said there, I was going to actually point out, I can't remember. But yeah, I think there are changes that are actually happening to the electoral system that require it. But if you don't go out and vote, if you don't make the effort to go out and vote and actually change the system, you're going to get what you're given. Just think that something like 30% of the electorate don't vote, right? There's maybe multiple reasons for that. Maybe low education, can't be bothered, whatever. But if that 30% went out and voted, then that could totally change elections. It could totally rewrite the type of politics that we have in Scotland. That's a massive electoral amount, and that would totally have a transformational change in Scottish politics if they can be bothered going out and voted.
So I suppose what I would ask here then is if there was a quote unquote right party, because I know you said there's a new Libertarian party that comes out, and just say you get a hung parliament and you get voted in, or you win outright, what's going to be different from the parliament that's going to take place in the political party that's going to take place in Holyrood to stop the globalist agenda from fulfilling what it's going to fulfill?
Let me just go back, because I remember what I was going to comment on as well. The Scottish Parliament was set up by Westminster, so there's no upper chamber to hold the Parliament for scrutiny. Nicola Sturgeon has got too many powers. This was done by Westminster. The Scottish Parliament hasn't been set up by the people, and basically what we've got is an authoritarian person who's not very good at actually managing the country. She's been pretty incompetent, to be brutally honest. I don't think all women are going to be incompetent, but I think she has been incompetent, and I think she's been deliberately pushing the globalist agenda and this postmodernist Marxist anti-white male, anti-black as well. You're right, anti-African, it's anti-women, it's anti-everybody. Basically, this agenda. But
can I jump in?
Go on.
I don't agree. I think it was you and Resisting the Lies were chatting behind the scenes. I don't agree it's anti-black or anti-women. Like, what they do is they treat these people as basically retards that don't know what they're doing. Forgive the term, but
and I don't think they are.
No, but they do that so that they can give them special treatment. They can pit them against the natives. It's not about them being anti this or anti that. It's a political game to hold down the native population. Like the biggest thing that I think is more disgusting than racism is that if me, you, any native Scot was to collectivise, we're told that we're going to commit some genocide. We're basically, if white people ever do anything, white Scots specifically, do anything to help themselves out, they're potentially going to genocide other groups. That's going to attack minorities, and it's if we're this evil race that we can't just talk about self-interest in a positive way that puts us first and not outsiders first all the time. And I think that's more disgusting than calling someone a mean name than asking someone about their religion publicly that's a public figure. I don't agree with that whole they're anti-black and anti-women. It's an intentional political game they're playing. All to put us down.
I mean, I don't disagree. I think you're correct as well. I don't think they know what they're doing, and they're deliberately doing it. And they're in bed with the media and big tech. Silicon Valley, I mean, I've been banned. My LinkedIn profiles were taken down. I was taken off Facebook. They did what happened to Alex Jones. So they know they're deliberately trying to control the narrative, but people are starting to see through it. CNN's ratings are an absolute disaster. So they're starting to lose. We've seen the power of the truckers in Canada protesting, and Turdo, another idiot in charge, is increasingly under pressure to change tack, and I think he will have to do that, or he might have to resign. But yeah, he's not the best First Minister over there. So I don't disagree. It's been done deliberately. It's been done deliberately on an international basis by people who are not very good, pretty incompetent as leaders. We've got elected pretty incompetent leaders, and I would suggest that we have to look at the quality of individual that's actually standing. I would say, I would vote for Tam Laird. Even though Tam and I don't agree on everything, I would definitely vote for Tam. And back to, I think, Scott, you said about what would the difference if we were in charge. So say, for instance, this new party, the Scottish Libertarian Party, were in charge. We would be we would be getting rid of the hate speech bills. We would be enshrining, if we could probably even codify something like like a constitution to protect the people in Scotland. Probably doing something a wee bit more. Well, the new party will do is something a wee bit more like Sweden from a democratic point of view, where you, the people, can bring up things as well. We would have more checks and balances on the state. So that the outside groups would be able to hold the political class to account. Nobody's holding, including the judiciary, the political class to account. That's why, if you look back, I chinned the whoever the head judge was, who was working with the Scottish, the SNP, and he went after I get involved as well. So he's no longer the head judge because he was seen to be compromised. So we've got the big tech in America, we've got the judiciary, we've got the media here, and including the main parties, the five main parties are all on basically de facto the same team. To try and break into that and change the narrative is going to be very hard. I'm going to get it in the chin, which I always knew that it was going to happen. But hopefully, at the end, we have more of a Luke Skywalker future rather than a Darth Vader future.
Well, definitely, I definitely hope for brighter times, especially for the British people in their own homelands. But I'm just looking at the time, guys. We've been nearly going now for 80 minutes. I'm just a wee bit conscious because obviously it's a Sunday night and stuff. People will work in the morning. Is there anything that you would, because we will definitely get you back on and come back to the points that we haven't covered at a further date, mate. Is there anything really that you would really like to finish off with letting the chat know, and then I can put it to DJ and no chance?
Well, I think we have to wonder what our political class are doing with the Islamic question, and they seem to not addressing it, but facilitating basically rape and murder in our society now. And we've had 50 up to, I think, 2017 mass murder attempts in 7/7 in the UK. We've had another I think up to 20 mass murder attempts in the UK by Islamists. We've had mass rapes. We've had individual issues like the guys getting stabbed. The police officer, Chris Donald. There was two boys down in England. One was killed. One was attempted murder by a group of up to 6 Muslim kids. So these are all low level stuff that that gets kicked into the long grass. So there's an issue there that is not being addressed, and not including the mass rapes in every town and village all over the place that seem to be covered up by the political class, and downstream of that, the social workers, the local authority, and the police. and there seems to be a deliberate attempt, and they'll smear me. I don't really care about the smearing, to be brutally honest with you. I'm a wee bit like Tommy Robinson in that sense, and I don't really care about being smeared because I've got faith in myself that I understand my politics and understand myself well enough. But that's what they'll do. They try and they play the man, not the ball, and they'll try and destroy you in any way that they can to make you less palatable to the public and less palatable to being elected and being a voice against the globalist shills, and that's their objective. They either try and silence you, shut you down, destroy your reputation, destroy anything that they can do, they'll do to actually destroy you. So you have to have thick skin, and you have to have good people like yourselves who can see past that. And that's maybe one of the refreshing things that's actually happening. A lot of the great comments on my streams as well. Great support from my baby gorillas, and you guys have commented in the past as well. And it's been very refreshing that I have now and can now challenge the highest echelons of our society and win.
Well, that's definitely a positive and a motivator to take forward with whatever it is. I suppose would be the next chapter in terms of your media and your politics, what direction you're going to go forward with it. And we wish you all the best, my friend. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure. No chance, is there anything that you want to finish off with this evening for the guys? Anything you want to plug with that before we go?
No, all I'd say is I understand the kind of focus on Islam, but the reason they get so much protection is because of all the interest groups, all government bought and paid for interest groups that tries to put things under the rug. But say for talking's sake, I don't see it as a natives versus Islam. I see it as everyone versus the natives. If there was a group of Scottish boys, organised groups, family members, uncles, cousins that were raping Muslim girls en masse, that would not be covered up. There would be mass arrests. It would be nipped in the bud immediately. But if there was Scottish boys, organised, cousins, uncles, raping African girls, that would be in the media. It would be nipped in the bud straight away. Same applies to for raping Jewish people, blah, 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 blah. All these groups have special interest groups protecting them from any smears, any media attacks, all that. They've got the government in their pocket. I don't see it as Islam versus natives. I see it as everyone versus the natives. And that's why I don't see us getting more conscious of that, being aware of and calling a spade openly, talking about anti-whiteism that exists in Parliament and media and companies, big organisations have all got these quotas. I don't see that as engaging in identity politics. I just see that as self-defence and keep that as far away from me as possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mark Dice was talking about that anti-white racism as well, and it's definitely not been addressed as well. So, and it's quite interesting because in America, I think more white people are killed by African American or European Americans are killed by African Americans than vice versa, and that's not really talked about. And that's even with such a large difference. I think only 13% of the population is African American, which means only 6.5% of the population, which will probably predominantly be male, the more white people are killed than vice versa. And obviously it's only a proportion of that that's actually killing them, because there's a lot of good African American guys out there as well. So it's only a proportion of that that's actually killing them, and that's not talked about as well. It's all the narrative is slanted.
In fact, just somebody JC brought up a good point in the chat. Is I don't know if you followed the whole Whoopi Goldberg controversy.
That's intersectional. That's intersectional politics.
But are you familiar with the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League?
Yeah, I know who the ADL are. Yeah.
So they were set up to basically protect defamation against Jews, and then they brought out this definition of racism, which was basically only whites can be racist.
Yeah, that's right.
And then they've since changed that, because obviously Whoopi Goldberg took what she's been spoon-fed for long enough that only whites can be racist, and she stupidly assumed that Jews are white, which for long enough they've claimed that they're not a race, they're a religious group and an ethnicity, but they're not a race. Now they are a race because it's politically convenient, but now they've completely changed the definition of racism to basically only whites can be racist unless you're Jewish.
Yeah. Which is quite incredible, isn't it? I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable. So, I mean, it's openly racist, but they've done it, whether it be for African people before or Jewish people. This has just changed. I mean, they're just changing the racism from one demographic to another, and that's the worrying thing. I mean, we're now saying, it's okay if we're racist, but you're not allowed to be racist. That's basically the agenda, isn't it? We're allowed to say whatever we choose, but you're going to be silenced and we'll put you in jail if you say anything, but we'll say anything that we choose.
It's an echo chamber as such, with the same shared interests for the same breakdown of society. That's the way I see it, boys. But I don't want to be ignorant to DJ, so I'll finish up with DJ. Is there anything that you kind of want to get off your chest before we wrap it up, or anything that you wish to share a plug, mate?
What, the stream ended? For fuck's sake. I should have done what? Nah, fuck it, man. It's all good, like.
Well, like that, guys, thanks very much for joining us tonight. Thanks very much to everyone in the chat that's afforded some time to come along this Sunday evening. It's been really appreciated. I wish you all a very good, pleasant week. And hopefully you all take care of one another. I will finish off with saying, Mr. Guerilla TV, again, thank you very much for joining us. We will look to get you on at a future date to cover those topics that we never managed to get through. And God bless and take care all. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate speaking to you. I've been looking forward to having a chat with you guys, and it's been a real pleasure as well.
Well, it's been good. Well, I don't think I said very much, to be honest. That's what it is.
Are we off screen? Are we finished?
I don't
Is it
know.
still live?